Man, I love food. What's up, backpackers? I'm Dan, and welcome to Backpacking Adventures, where we talk about backpacking, hiking, and gear. And if those interest you and you're new to this channel, consider subscribing, but make sure you hit that bell notification so you don't miss a thing. Okay, today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite things, food. Specifically, food while backpacking in the winter. You probably heard me talk about in other videos that winter backpacking is one of my favorite times of the year to backpack. Now, one of the best things about winter backpacking is, in my mind, the food. So I don't know why a lot of people still, when they go backpacking in the winter, bring dehydrated meals. I can see if you're going very long distances, but most people don't in the winter. And you can just be creative and cook and bring all kinds of really good foods and eat like a king. Now, as a disclaimer, I live in central Pennsylvania, so when I say winter, my temperatures are usually around 20 to 40 degrees during the day and roughly 0 to 20 degrees at night. So that's about the temperature range that I'm dealing with. So why do I like backpacking in the winter so much? Well, the scenery is different, the trail looks entirely different. Maybe there's snow on the ground. I usually always build a fire. There's no bugs, there's no little critters, and best of all, it's cold out. And why is it being cold out such a good thing? Well, you're basically walking around in a giant refrigerator. And why is walking around in a giant refrigerator so good? Well, that allows you to bring foods you otherwise wouldn't be able to bring in warm weather. You're not limited to dehydrated foods or foods that have to be shelf stable for any period of time. Since it's so cold out, you can take things like meats, eggs, vegetables, potatoes, cheeses, whatever you want. You can be creative. And there's nothing like after a long hike during the day, you set up camp, and usually it gets dark early, so you're usually at camp early, you set up, and around 5 or 6 it's dark out, so what are you going to do? Well, since I usually have a fire, I like to cook on the fire. And I've cooked everything from chicken to beef tips to steak, toasted bread, I've cooked potatoes, all different kinds of vegetables, eggs, cheeses, you name it. And as long as it's cold enough, you don't have to worry about it going bad. So some of the types of food I like to bring are steak, chicken, potatoes, different types of vegetables, eggs, sausage. I make pancakes out there. You name it. You can be creative. Anything you can make at home, you can pretty much make on the trail. Now, let's talk about the food prep. Now, I don't usually take the whole potato out there or fresh vegetables without them already being processed in some way. So for the potatoes, I will cut them up, I will cook them in the microwave or cook them on the stove the night before, get them almost done, so that way when they're on the trail, I don't have to cook them for an hour or so until they're done. If I'm making a steak and I want it marinated or chicken, I will do that the night before or a day or two before. If you're going to have a steak and you're going to put vegetables in with it, you can pre-cut them up and just put them in a Ziploc bag before you go. There's really no reason for you to be cutting up vegetables when you're at your campsite. Now, if you like to do that, then fine. For me, I like it to be a little bit more efficient and have the ingredients ready to go for when I start cooking. So you're out on the trail, you bring all this good food with you. How do you cook it? What do you cook with? Well, you don't have to go all out and buy all kinds of different fancy pots and stoves. I bought one little skillet, I think it was $20, it was an MSR skillet, and I use that for almost everything. And I use a piece of aluminum foil as a lid, and I cook my meats, potatoes, whatever I need to, cook it in there, and then I just use it as a plate. I don't really need to take any other pots or pans with me. That usually works out very well. Another thing I take on the trail in the winter is this little grill. I got this from Expedition Research. It's a bushcraft grill. It's this little thing that you can put 2 pieces of wood on your fire and you can cook on this. I've used it to make toast. I've used it to cook my steak on. This little thing is nice. It's not very big. It's not meant for cooking meals for, 4 or 5 people, but this thing does the trick. One of the biggest things I use to cook my foods is, surprisingly, aluminum foil. You could pretty much cook everything if you really wanted to in some kind of aluminum foil. I cut out squares. Well, this is really not really a square, but close enough for government work. And I usually cut out squares and I fold them up and I bring about 3 or 4. One of them will be a lid. One of them I use to cook some vegetables or potatoes, or I've even put chicken in here and put it directly in the fire. I usually get the heavy duty aluminum foil. This doesn't burn, it won't catch fire. I guess at some point if you put it in a major giant inferno it's going to burn, but this works great. It works perfect for almost everything I need. So one of the things you're going to need is utensils to cook with. And you don't need anything fancy. You could probably bring utensils you have from home. So I went and I purchased these small little utensils from, I think this is from GSI. I can't remember what these are. This is also from GSI, but it's just a little spatula thing, works nice, and a little spoon if you need to stir anything. And these foldable tongs that I use quite a bit for flipping meat or whatever. And these things are perfect. They collapse, they're small, they're very light, very easy to clean. They're good for non-stick pans. These things work very well. I also, with GSI, when I bought those, I got this little salt and pepper shaker. 1/2 is salt, 1/2 is pepper. It's real small, it's a perfect size. You can just use a small Ziploc bag too. You don't need to go get this. One other thing I did buy was a knife for cutting the meat or cutting cheese or whatever I need to do. And this knife is the Victorinox. It's called the Little Vicky. And I got this from Lightsmith. It's very light, and this thing is sharp. I don't know how many times I cut my hand on this thing. It's very, 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 very sharp, so be careful. It's very light, and I'm probably gonna have cut my hand again. It's easy to clean, and you just keep it in with your utensils. To store your food, you're gonna wanna make sure that you check the weather, you know what the temperature is gonna be, to see if you need to bring anything special. As long as it's cold enough, your food is not going to go bad. So before you go on a trip, make sure you see what the temperatures are and plan your food accordingly. If it's not going to be below freezing, then you don't have to worry about some of your food freezing at night. For example, I like to bring eggs for the next day for breakfast. I normally scramble them at home and then I bring them along with me. Well, if I know it's going to be below freezing, then I have to kind of take precautions so the eggs don't freeze overnight. Now, one thing you can bring is a thermos. Now, this is a cheap thermos I got from Walmart. I think it's a Coleman thermos. But basically, what it said on the label is that if you put something hot in it, it'll keep it hot. If you put something cold in it, it'll keep it cold. The basic premise of this is it'll keep it roughly at the temperature of what you put it in. I usually scramble the eggs and I'll put them in here. You can use this for other liquids that you don't want to freeze at night as well. But this is something definitely worth getting if you want to cook some kind of liquid like eggs in the wintertime. So you can really eat like a king when you're on trail. A lot of times I say I eat better when I'm out in the trail in the winter than I do at home. And if you're worried about, well, I don't know how to cook on a fire, or I'm gonna ruin it or burn it, don't worry about that. Just try it out. And if you're really that scared, bring your stove, but still cook out there, cook really good food. It'll make your trip much, much better in the wintertime. Or if you can't even build a fire, then just use your stove. But cooking all these kind of foods, you will not regret it. And the next time you go on a trip, you're going to have fun trying to figure out what you're going to bring to eat. What am I going to bring the next time I go? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope it helped you out. If you like it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.